There has not been an example of him playing a long, good innings against the moving ball in Test cricket, right? And he's 3 years in. So that's, I feel like that. I mean, I know they love him, and I know that he can play really nice shots. But I also think that first day of the series, when England made 500 a day,
it's just such a tiresome argument. I mean, we just go round and round in circles. You think this, I think this.
Only 7 Englishmen have scored 3 or more Test hundreds before turning 24. Cook, Hutton, Root, Gower, Atherton, Botham, and Harry Brook. It is very good company that Brook finds himself in. It's probably fair to point out that the pitches were slow and the Pakistan attack wasn't especially good at times, but he also finished the series as its leading run scorer by more than 100 runs. Joe, it's a question that everyone's asking. How do England fit a fully fit Jonny Bairstow back into that side? He's unlikely to be back for the New Zealand tour in February, but he should be back for the home summer, which includes the Ashes.
I think most of us were sort of getting to that stage where, well done, folks, you've done well, but step aside. And then he serves a reminder of how useful he is, albeit I think it is quite it's a complicated one. I think in subcontinental conditions, Foakes offers so much as a batter, so much more as a batter than he does in home conditions, where it's doing a bit more, especially against quick bowling. And also those keeping skills are much more valuable in the subcontinent than they are over here generally. And yet Stokes said the opposite. But that's to make room for an extra bowler, isn't it? So he said that in England he remains his keeper, but out here in the subcontinent he wants to go a different way, which is Stokes being Stokes. I think. I mean, I think given the kind of the luxury of the options they've got at the moment, I think Foakes probably does make way in England's best available side, and I think Bairstow taking the gloves makes more sense than Pope doing it. Pope's going to bat 3. That said, Bairstow has done pretty well as a specialist batter over the last year. It's fairly typical of his Test career to then change his role and ask him to keep wicket. That said, I don't think he'd mind doing it. That's a job he's always wanted to do anyway. Question mark around the injury, though. This is a serious injury he's had. We don't know when he's going to be back. Even when he is back, he's not a young man anymore. Is that injury going to inhibit his wicket keeping at all? Do you throw him back in as a number 4 and a keeper when he hasn't played for so long and he's come back from injury? That is a difficult one. But I think at the moment, Foakes, if everyone was available and fit, I think Foakes probably does make way in whatever the conditions. Even if Stokes is saying that, I just think who else do you drop?
Well, I've got some ideas. So
Crawley.
First
you want to drop Crawley, don't you?
Foakes made 100 in the toughest batting conditions of the English summer. That, like, from a technical point of view, you could argue that was, up there with the best innings of the summer.
That is true. Yeah, that is certainly true.
And we also got, reminders of his keeping brilliance in this test, and that will be an added value, kind of wherever.
That run out,
yeah, that changed the game.
That
really
was absolutely huge. Getting Babar out, nothing was happening, and it was a piece of brilliance that you wouldn't expect an ordinary keeper to produce.
Yeah, and I also feel with Foakes, compared to England's 2 other, compared to Crawley and Pope, there's just an element of the fact that there hasn't been an investment in him, so it's easier to let him go. I mean, Foakes averages about 5 runs more per innings than Zach Crawley, and Crawley has at no stage, and we're 3 years into his Test career, at no stage he's shown he can handle any sort of sideways movement. I think it's just like I basically still don't really understand the Crawley thing. Even in this series, okay, first pitch, flat track, 150. They bring in a useful spinner, a good spinner, and he doesn't really have any idea what's going on. And that is the same when there is a seam or swing bowler, and there is a bit of assistance in the surface. I kind of think that it's at the stage now where it's not about has Crawley, do we know that Crawley is a failure as a Test batter? It's that you're picking your best 7 batters, and Foakes, I think, has shown he is a more valuable Test batter than Crawley. Obviously, then you ask who opens, and I guess I think basically the New Zealand series is just a key one for 4 players, really. I think that you obviously Root and Stokes nailed on, and Brook you'd have to say as well. Duckett, Crawley, even Pope, who still only averages a tick more than what Foakes does in Test cricket, and Foakes. Any of them struggles, I could see them sitting out for the start of the summer. And I think that
it's only 4 innings.
Yeah, I know, but I think
they're not dropping,
and they're
Pope.
All in form, and they're all a part of the setup.
Yeah,
so
but they're all in form.
Would you drop Foakes then if Bairstow's back and give Bairstow the gloves
for the summer?
Yeah,
I think there's lots of lots of things that can still play out. I think the injury and the impact that it will have, I think, is a good point that Joe makes. Broke his leg. That's a hefty injury for a 33, 34-year-old. If push were to come to shove and everybody's fit, then I would bat Stokes at 7, I'd bat Bairstow at 6, and I'd give the gloves to Bairstow. If push absolutely came to shove. But there's so many other variables at play there. Bairstow's not going to open the batting. Pope's not going to open the batting. Root's not going to open the batting. So those two, you might want to drop one, but you're going to bring in another opener. I can't see that they would say to Bairstow, who has never really done it against the new ball, the new red ball. He's always struggled against the seaming ball throughout his career. Crawley struggled for 2 years, but Bairstow struggled for 10 years against the seaming delivery. When it's ramrod straight and he's in form and he's happy, then he's dynamite. We all know that. Bairstow's not a red ball opener, I don't think. Certainly not against an Aussie pace attack. So I think that's null and void. They're not going to... Pope is then their boy at number 3. Finally, they've got somebody at number 3 who can score runs. It would be madness to give him the gloves. It would be madness to move him from number 3, I think. So it really is... If Bairstow is coming back into the team, and I don't think that's absolutely a stick on either, by the way, then for age, for fitness, and for the fact that, he is a form player. He is a streaky player. He obviously had a marvellous, stunning 3 or 4 months. But literally before that, there were question marks, going into this calendar year. There were big question marks about whether he should even be around the side anymore. He'd had a very, very rough trot until that 100 he made in Sydney, I think it was. As I say, you ask me now, I'd give him the gloves and I'd bat him at 6. But there's so many variables between now and June.
As Ben kind of alluded to there as well, it sort of fits the Ben Foakes England Test cricketer narrative that through no real fault of his own, when push comes to shove, he is the one to make way. And I suppose that's particularly in this team, he is a very, very assured, competent batter, but he is not explosive in the way that the rest of them are. Now, how many explosive batters do you need? Seemingly all of them. So it feels like that is the way that it'll end up, because it usually does end up that way for Ben Foakes, even though he's done very little wrong and actually had a very good year in Test cricket.
That said, I thought they would drop Foakes ahead of the 22 English summer. Brook was the form player in the country. You had Bairstow you can keep, and that was a really good opportunity for them to say to Foakes, who hadn't had a great series in West Indies, yeah, I know that wasn't a long run, but we're going to go with Brook, who's the informed batter in the country, and Bairstow, who's got a couple of Test 100s recently. They could have done that and they didn't. I think so. I think Bairstow has to play fit. He just had one of the best summers any Englishman's ever had. Root obviously has to play. Stokes obviously has to play. Brook obviously has to play. And then I kind of think I probably agree with Ben that I think I can't see Crawley averaging more than 25 in a home Ashes summer at the top of the order. I'd open with Stokes, and I think he'd be up for it. It's crazy. You'd never considered doing it before, but someone else has to do it. And I can see Stokes saying, "Well, someone's got to do it, so I'll do it."
I can see the argument for actually any of Pope, Brook, Bairstow, or Stokes opening over Crawley. And I know you might say, "Well, they're all middle order players." Crawley, to me, looks like a middle order player more than an opener.
But he's their opening batsman,
right? But he's not good at opening the batting. So, I mean, he's an opener, but he's not. But there has not been an example of him playing a long, good innings against the moving ball in Test cricket, right? And he's 3 years in. So that's. I feel like that. I mean, I know they love him, and I know that he can play really nice shots. But I also think that first day of the series, when he made 500 a day,
it's just such a tiresome argument. I mean, we just go round and round in circles. You think this, I think this. And there's more evidence. There's more evidence to back up my position, but not enough to convince you. He averages 36 over his last 7 games. He's made a good 100. He's made a big 100 against Shaheen Afridi. He's 24. They like him. They don't pick him by accident. They see him all the time. They are. Look, we've been through it a million times.
I think it is different though.
I think he can play, and you don't.
But I think it's different. No one is saying that any of those 8 batters we're talking about can't play. they have to drop someone who has done well for them recently. They have to.
But the point is, what we're thinking what they might do. Crawley's going to open the batting for the first test of the Ashes. He just is, and he might, his Test career might be done by the end of it. Possibly, you never know. But
he couldn't score a run for Kent, and he still played this summer just gone.
they're not going to drop Pope. Even there's not time for Pope to lose form enough for them to drop him. And also, I think he could have a long run of poor scores. They have absolutely kind of bet the house on Pope as well,
with good reason.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's been justified. He's played different types of innings to the others in difficult conditions, and has looked like a number 3.
Yeah,
there's one person who's averaged over 30 opening the batting in the last however many years, and it's Rory Burns, and he averages 30.02. So no one's saying it's a doddle. No one's saying it's easy here. But what you have seen, you can't argue with the fact that what you have seen with Zach Crawley in the last half a dozen 7 games is that there is a small upswing in his form, in the way that he's played. And we all said this last week. We spoke about that knock where he eschewed the ball outside off stump, and he was 18, 17 not out, and then went on to make 40 odd the day after against South Africa. Was it India? Might have been India.
South Africa.
Obviously, he made the runs in the final test match to help win that game, and he's gone to Pakistan and he's played pretty well. He got run out and he's made 100 and he's made a couple of 50s. So he's done fine. There is an upswing there.
And also that opening partnership right at the start of the series cannot be underestimated in terms of the impact it had for the whole thing. And that's why they pick him. That is, whether we agree with it or not, that is the justification.
And I do.
And in this series, it's undeniably come off.
Just on that
so it's
opening
going to carry on.
partnership, Ben Duckett had a brilliant series. He ended it as its second leading run scorer, averaged 70, strike rate of 95. Like pretty much 8 of England's batsmen, by the way, had strike rates between 90 and 100 by the end of the series.
Yeah, and it's worth dwelling on Duckett because I've seen some people suggest that England might just view him as an Asian condition specialist, and I don't see why they would be heading that way at all at this point in time. I mean, he's been the form county batter in the country over the past 4 years or so. He's the one guy who basically consistently has averaged over 40. He has that McCullum tempo. I think obviously if he struggles in New Zealand, things are different. But obviously he'll get that series, and I personally feel he has more chance of having a good Ashes series and a fruitful New Zealand series than Zach Crawley does. But I also feel that if both struggle in New Zealand, it will be Duckett that gets the chop, I guess.